again, it's all cool that we created this right now. So it's just exciting to be in the moment right now.
Me too. I'm excited too.
Well, I think we should start.
All right, let's do it.
Well, we keep cutting you off here. It's always a bad habit when we got. I keep hearing you start to talk, and then we just jump in like,
Mansplaining.
You're not gonna talk. You're really not gonna say anything this whole time.
Yeah, I guess, but it's our show. We're just gonna talk over you now. Okay. Here we go.
All right.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is another episode of the Natives in America podcast. We have Sky with me here. Where you at,
Hey,
Sky?
what's up? I'm here.
He's here. And,
alive.
He's alive and well, it sounds like. And here with us today, we've got Amy Juan. Amy, are you there? Go ahead.
Hey, shop guys, everybody. Really, really happy and excited to be on the podcast tonight. I was joking earlier about feeling like I made it, but I'm really honest and truthful about that because, to me, it always means more when it's coming from home. Yeah. And to really, I guess, just have that recognition and opportunity to talk to people at home because that's where, everything really matters to me.
Yeah.
And so thank you for having me on. Let's do it.
Let's get it popping.
Definitely welcome. A definite welcome guest. I tend to ask our guests to send photos or something for when we do the actual posting. And next thing I knew, I looked at my phone and I had 27 messages. That I think at some point it made it all the way to 50. And I was, huh?
I said I didn't know I sent you that much.
it just kept going up. I was like, whoa, this is blowing my mind. And then I started reading the titles that you were putting on them. They were like links, I think. And man, I started reading the titles and looking in the photos. I was like, wow, these are really incredible photos. And I actually just want to dive right in. I guess introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit of your maybe your resume. Is a way to put it because that's kind of what you had sent me in those photos.
Yeah.
So wherever you want to begin.
Okay.
Once upon a time.
Hey, thank you in 1986.
Yeah.
I always feel like, we're Autumn, so I should introduce myself in Autumn first.
Yeah.
I'm Jiggy, Amy Juan, Chakawaya Amajit, Stricta Fiction, Chinyaaga, Chichigig, Grimalda Miguel, Sylvester Juan, and Yakak Jinuwaska, Chichigig, Mary Melissa Miles Butt, Daniel Butt, and Yahorch and Yababa, Chichigig, Mary Elizabeth Miguel Butt, Lawrence Miguel Butt, and you will put Elijah Kristen Ross, and Autumn Jiggy got Thomas Dominic, and you will become Neil, you will become. So, what's up, everybody? Shop guys. I don't really like to translate my introduction. If you know, you know. Yeah. But my people come from Newfields or Wichita. That's where my dad's family's from.
Nice.
And my mom's family's from Arijukshan or Little Tucson and Babakiri district. But for the most part, I guess officially, I'm enrolled in the Stricta district, and there's a whole story behind how I ended up there. But those are the three main communities that I represent, and just giving recognition to my family, to my grandparents, to my siblings, and my awesome name is Tomatonirik, and that means Milky Way light. That's the name that was given to me by my Hur, Mary Elizabeth, and I come from the Buzzard clan, and so that plays a lot into my personality, and that's just who I am, you know, as the basics. That's who I come from and the places that I come from. So
awesome. I'm listening to him, and I'm like listening. I'm thinking like genealogy and all the names you named off, and I heard a few that I was like, I know these people. I'm related to some of these people, and I'm part of the same communities. Like Newfields, and I'm from Coalfields and Babakiri district. And, yeah, so like I don't know where that.
Me and Benji are related.
Yeah.
Our grandfathers were brothers.
Yeah.
And so our families, on our dad's side, come from Newfields, Woodchurch, Oiduck. And I think that plays a lot into, you know, definitely who we are and just, you know, how we grew up and the values. And I also think just like people who grow up along the border have a different kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And just a lot of the changes that we've seen in our generation, which I'll get into later. But, me and Benji are Hajin.
Oh, yeah.
And Sky, too, on my mom's side.
That's
my dad's from Rotucci.
My mom and your dad, right, Sky?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're all cousins, dang. So this is good, though.
All my relations.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
So, where to begin? Like, there's so much. Look, I always kind of wonder, like, me and Sky are always talking about when you feel like an adult. You know, does it ever happen? Do you ever feel like that? And I'm kind of I guess my question is, like, I've had this moment where I had like a life-changing experience, or I went through some kind of experience, and then suddenly it's like, all right, this is what I want to do. Like, did you have you ever had that moment, like, between, all right, you're a young person, you're, you know, getting out of school, and then suddenly you're doing all these things? Like, I think the first time I realized you were really getting down was when I saw you on national TV, like, doing a statement at the freaking it was the United Nations?
Yeah.
Is that what it was? Like,
yeah.
And you were up there talking with our chairman of the tribe, and I was like, whoa, like, what's really going on there? So, like, I'm asking, what was it for, like, when did all this begin? Like maybe how you led up to that. Like, when, I'm sure there's so much more. I was looking at all the photos you sent, and at what point do you think you had, like, a moment of, you know, clarity, I guess? You knew what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, it was really something to go through my pictures. And, you know, when you asked for pictures, I was like, okay, where are all my pictures? They're on Facebook, of course, right now. Nice. And so to go through them was, it really meant a lot to me today and helped me prepare to have this conversation with you guys, and just as a reminder, you know, like, of that, like, who am I?
Yeah.
And so I know I sent you some pictures of our great-grandparents and some pictures of me as a little baby and with my ALF. So, you know, I would say I'm 34, and earlier, you know, just sharing about our families, my family, and I'm really thankful to have grown up in all of these communities, but most especially in Newfields. because that was a place that I was at every weekend with my grandma and hanging out with my grandpa Daniel and just having that, like, freedom to be a kid and to play with all my cousins and just to, like, you know, be a desert girl. And Newfield, my memories are of all those times when we would get together on the weekends just to cook out, just to eat together, just to be together. And it was getting ready for something. Some of my earliest memories of being in Newfield is I remember playing in the trees with all my cousins and, like, the old cars. And we were butchering a cow there at the great-grandparents' house. And I remember watching from the trees when they brought the cow out into the clearing and watching all of, you know, our Grandma Matilda, our Grandma Elaine, and all the cowboys that aren't around anymore, watching them all come to bless the cow and watching them slit its throat and watching the blood and I guess learning then, like, you know, what it means to, like, have respect for life and to provide to provide for each other and to actually, like, process, you know, food together and what that means. You know, I guess just the work ethic and the part about, like, respecting life. I guess in my child's mind, you know, we're watching a cow being butchered, and when you think about, you know, that scene of, like, cutting the throat, I guess what I learned in that instance was, you know, it's not something to be afraid of. It's not something to be ashamed of, because, you know, getting to watch our elders, like, pay their respects and to just do the work, and then, you know, watching them cut up the cow, and then, you know, us as little kids were given that job to carry this, you know, these bowls of meat under the watho to where all the other men were under there. And I still remember that sound of a knife sharpening against a stone. Oh, wow. Something that sticks with me. And just watching, you know, all the men process the meat, and then getting to eat afterwards too. You know, the meal part and the cleaning up, and just how it was all day process, like, that really helped me, I guess, develop that sense of family and community, and just growing up like that. And and I saw that on my mom's side of the family too, but Newfield, because of that, like, Wakyard Himduk or cowboy culture, like, it was just, I always liked that. I always liked being on the move and being with my grandpa Daniel or Grandpa D. And it just always seemed like his house was just like a fun place to be, you know, like a little homemade house. And I was just always fascinated by all the things he had. He always had candy. He always had watermelon. He always had the white powdered donuts, and he always had his mystery magazines, and he just let us play, you know, and yeah. And then also, like, going back and forth with him across the border, like, you know, cruising in the back of his pickup truck and not realizing at the time that we were even crossing a border, you know. We just knew that we were going to the cemetery. We just knew that we were going to go check on the relatives on that side. And so that really is my foundation, I guess you would say, in my childhood, like, just growing up in that type of environment, and those are things that give me a sense of purpose, because, you know, we all know that things are different now in terms of the border, and I added a lot of pictures of that too, like what the border looked like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, like now. Because that's a big part of my identity and what, you know, lights my fire, because it all goes back to that. Like, it goes back to family, it goes back to land, it goes back to being happy and, like, providing for each other. And so much has changed and it pisses me off, and so that's what I think about, and I also just a little bit more about me is like I'm really thankful that the way my life has turned out, like I don't have kids, I'm not in I'm not married or anything like that, so I've really had the opportunity to just live my life and to learn about myself and to basically do what I want to do. And so that's been a real blessing, and it's taken me to a lot of places, but it's all been with the encouragement of like family and friends, and just growing up with all of those values. So that's part of my foundation, and definitely my grandmas, our aunties who are educated and outgoing women, and having them around to encourage me growing up, to speak up, to speak clearly, to get involved, and to give back. Those are all things that I was, I was raised with, and so I really took those things to heart, and I'm really happy that I did, and it's really humbling too, because on the other side, I think about it like I don't even have my bachelor's yet, but it's because all of this different work has pulled me different directions. But definitely I'm thankful, because I wouldn't be where I'm at if I had took that route. So and you saw the picture, so I mean I can go on and on, but I guess that there's questions, to help guide directly.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
It's crazy because being a kid and growing up in the village, and how there's different sections, and when we were young, there's the other side, and when we would talk about it, hey, we're so and so, they're on the other side, and it was just it was so crazy how maybe that was just
the game,
not having those borders, not knowing those borders confined us. So
I knew it as the game.
Hearing you talk about, just being able to go from that side to this side and not even making that distinction, and then how we have to conform to that being there, and it just, how does that limit us, or how does that affect us? But damn, that's crazy, but so cool that you got to sunk that all in, and that just makes me understand you so much better, and but also before this call, I was thinking man, Amy's, she's always been on the move, on the go, and just sort of just taking care of business and politics, and whether it's activism or even sharing how to sing songs and sharing poems. It's just, you do it in all these forms, and I don't know, it's just so awesome that that you're, it's you're still doing it, and props, but just what is, I guess, what is your soundtrack? What is playing? What is the music playing throughout this whole time?
Definitely some reggae. Some rock. I grew up on reggae for the most part. Those are my earliest memories. It's hanging out with my dad and his friends and jamming out to, of course, Bob Marley, Alpha Blondie, Gregory Isaacs, all of the classics, I guess you would say. But on my mom's side, she was the rocker, surprisingly. Growing up with not like metal, but just like Tom Petty was a soundtrack growing up. Rolling Stones, Journey, like all of the 80s music. That was my mom. And then the soundtrack in New Folks was Texas Tornadoes, Las Vegas, you know, like that too. But when I think about like my soundtrack, I specifically think about Bob Marley's song Zimbabwe, and the lyrics. He says, every man has a right to decide his own destiny. And in this judgment, there's no partiality. So arm in arms with arms, we'll fight this little struggle, because that's the only way we'll overcome the little trouble. And that's something that always sticks with me, just, you know, reminding me that, like, together, you know, together, and arms can mean a lot of things. It's family, it's like knowledge, it's kinfolk, it's all these different things. But as long as we do it together, and that's something that my grandma Melissa would always say. And when I was small, I used to think it was real corny, but she would always talk about like JFK and how, you know, his quote, like, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. But she would always put a little twist on it and say, you know, don't ask what your community can do for you. Ask what you can do for your community. Yeah. And, you know, like that, I always thought it was kind of corny, but I'm really glad that she would always tell me things like that. And I would get all emotional.
Nice.
But I think going back to your question about when did I grow up, I think I've had a lot of different times in my life where I had to like stop and pause and be like, oh shit, this is where I'm at now. Yeah. But I think the first time that I had that realization was, I think I was probably about, I want to say maybe 7 or 8. Wow. And this was around the time when things really started to change in Newfield. You know, going from that sense of freedom and, you know, not really seeing Border Patrol, not really seeing any travelers or smugglers or anything, like, before those times. And I want to really, like, emphasize that me and us, like, we're the last generation to really know what that was like. Yeah. And that really sticks with me, too. And so to remember those times and to think about, there was a weekend that we were all in Newfield, and everybody was kind of camping over at my Auntie Audrey's, and my little cousin Sissy, she had a dream about our grandpa, and when she woke up, she was just really like crying, and she wanted my uncle and everybody to go check on him because he was just right next door. So they did, and when they went over there, they found him gagged on his bed, and he had gotten robbed at gunpoint by some smugglers, and they tied him up in his bed. They put a pillow over his head, and they actually like shot at his head, but they missed him. But they took off with and they took off with his money, and you know, it was a scary situation, and so to have that like realization that, hey, something's happening, something's changing, and then it continued to happen in different ways was, I guess, a point of like, I don't want to say losing innocence, but going from having that sense of freedom to like, oh, we have to be careful now. And and then also like after that, watching the community take it upon themselves to protect the community. I remember riding with my uncles, and everybody had a strap. Everybody had flashlights, walkie-talkies, and all the families and new folks would take turns patrolling the community. And this was before the Rangers even existed, and this was before Border Patrol was here. Wow. I mean, Border Patrol's been around, you know, since for a while, but
all the way back.
And so that's always a pinpoint for me too to I guess realize like there are these changes, but also now looking back on it, I'm like, hey, we did it. Like, we did it on our own, and that's possible to protect our own community and patrol our own community.
Yeah.
And so I always think about that too, like when we bring up like our dependency on Border Patrol and all these outside agencies, it's like, nah, like we know our land best, we know our people, it's possible. And I still have that vision in my head for like the future and things I want to work on.
Yeah.
But that's my first realization, and I guess just understanding like, hey, this is
it's real.
Yeah, this is real. And then from there, because things like that were happening, was when we started to see a lot of changes as far as Border Patrol, the forward operating bases, their presence, hillside, mountaintop roads, checkpoints, harassment, all these things that we've experienced over the past, 15 years.
Yeah.
So that's all become a part of my, conscience, and has pushed me into the work. I say that in quotations, the work, because, it has turned into work where I'm actually being paid for it.
What are you doing?
But at the same time, it's just purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Are you out on the res right now?
I am. Yeah.
Where at? Are you? Do you stay in Newfields?
No, right now I'm actually living in Santa Rosa Ranch with my sister.
Whoa, it's out there, huh?
Yeah. But it's cool to be here because I went to school at Santa Rosa Ranch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from kindergarten to 8th grade. Yeah. And so I had real humble beginnings, and that is a part into it too. Going into a small school where most of our teachers were awesome. Where we actually had awesome cooks who cooked real food.
Wow.
And just to go up like that, to take walks out in the desert for recess, or all these res things that we would do that kids don't do anymore, or schools aren't able to do anymore.
Yeah.
And so, and then going over to Bobby Kirby High School, that was a little different too, because I think everybody who basically went to Bobo grew up together from preschool to high school.
Yeah.
Because I was at the ranch when I finally went to high school. I didn't really know anybody.
I've been thinking about it. Looking back, I feel like you kind of just popped out of nowhere. and it's funny because you popped out of nowhere and we're related. You know what I mean? Out of nowhere, I was like, hey, cuz, I got a cousin, and I didn't, just out of the blue, and we were all in high school, but for us, we all grew up, I remember a lot of the same faces all the way back to kindergarten. So it's when you showed up, God, it's out of the blue, but I was always happy to have more family. And you're related to a lot of the same people I'm related to. You mentioned Matilda and Elaine.
Mm-hmm.
And I just call them grandma, but my dad's mom had passed away a long time ago, and
mm-hmm.
But it sounds to me like growing up, it sounds like you grew up super early, and you grew up with this respect that came from your elders, and at the same time, it sounds to me like you're a big part of your identity. Just considering where you lived and where your family lived. Our family lived in. Sounded like the border is a huge issue, and it has been for a long time. I remember the last. I'm used to going. I was used to like walking and hitchhiking there every weekend. You know what I mean? Like when I was growing up on the res, we would say gate days. Like, hey, we hit up each other. Like all we'd say to each other is, hey, gate days. I'm like, oh, that's so all right. We're gonna get our shit. Start searching for stuff to trade with the Naido and Maria with their Mexican cheese over there. We'd go get it. And then recently, I was just trying to show my younger cousin the border. Like I was like, hey, we're just right here. Like I think I was like, Coalfields is about 10 miles away from the border, and I drove him there, and we pulled up. And the last time I had been there was just a barbed wire fence, and you could see the construction coming down the hill because it's that long straight line, and but all we had was a cattle guard and a barbed wire fence. Yeah. And we would just go across. We would come and go at will. And, I mean, the Border Patrol would be around. They'd be watching. You'd see them parked out nearby. But this last time I went out there, it was all metal pylons that were like, 10 or 15 feet high. And they were, rusted. They're all bright red. And they had the Border Patrol sitting on the cattle guard. The cattle guard still existed, but it was a truck parked on it, and right behind him was this giant, like, I-beam gate. And they had it locked, and it was locked, and it was one of the saddest experiences I ever had, like, looking at that and going, it's gone. Will I ever see Naido again? And Maria, and it was like that part of my life, and I was thinking about Elaine, and I think it was Matilda, because Matilda goes, I don't know if she still does, but she used to go there every day, like just crossing that border, going to check out the land that belonged, with our family, and she'd, go check on the property, and she'd go back and forth all the time. And it always blew my mind. I was like, God, this like elderly woman is going back and forth like all by herself in my mind, in like a van. Like I don't know if she took everybody, but it seemed like she was just going out there daring, courageous and brave, but at the same time it's like that's where her identity is too, is this imaginary border has come through and split it, in half. And like I don't think about it so much lately, except for like whenever I go down there, you're always passing border patrols. And I remember at some point there was you were talking about that forward operating base. The last time I had seen it, all it was like a trailer and a couple gravel parking spots. And then the next time I saw it, it looked like a base. They had all these buildings and parking lots, and like they were digging in, and I was like, here we go, like how much further they're gonna take this thing, and they never stop. Like you mentioned the checkpoints, and they have that giant coverage now, like a over their thing. Like I remember they were putting in the cement pylons, and I was like, oh my God. I know what they're doing. They're digging in. They're becoming more permanent. Like it always seemed temporary. Yep. Back then, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, they're digging in like ticks, and imposing their will and making their presence known, and it's ugly because we keep having these dark interactions with them. I've had like guns pulled on me, and I've felt endangered. Like, oh my God, I wish I had somebody else around me. Like I might need to call our police to come represent us and protect us from these people that they bring here and know nothing about the culture or the land or the history, and they come to push people around. Yeah. So everything you said, it's stuff I don't think about on a daily basis, but when I do, it's this dark, sad feeling.
It is, and I think that's why it's such a difficult topic for our people to talk about, because we're basically living history. Yeah. We're seeing like our history happen before our eyes, and these changes that are happening, and I think it's kind of a coping mechanism in some ways to just kind of ignore it, or I don't want to say ignore it, or just, go about our own lives, be awesome as much as we can, because once we really do, like, take a good look at, like you said, what's happening, what's happened, what's happening, and what that looks like, because it's going to go away. That, it is scary, but that's why I really, emphasize the teachings and that experience of going back and forth across the border and just being taught that, both sides of the line are home, and that both people on both sides of the line are our people, and learning about our sacred sites and the villages and the history, all of that predates that border. Yeah. Okay. I guess that's what I really hang on to, is that we are we literally are the truth of this land, and no one can argue with that, because our ancestors, their bodies and their belongings are I want to say we're there, because they're all as far as the borderline, they're being dug up as we speak for all of that destruction. But we're there. And the history, we talk about Jadaguahia. Jadaguahia is one of the mother villages. It's one of the oldest villages in our history, and is documented in old Spanish diaries dating back to the 1600s. And so, it's just, we're here. And I'm really thankful, too, that, our history, although it's we have our difficulties and things that we've gone through, but I'm also thankful that we were never, forcibly relocated from our homelands like other tribes have been. Yeah. So that really plays a lot into, our strength and our identity. And, it's really heavy. And, I think that, earlier I was sharing, all the good things, but also, I just want to say, I'm a red girl through and through, just going through the same challenges as everybody else, too. Growing up, being the oldest and a single mom and taking care of my family, and growing up in that time when smuggling was really heavy, but also seeing all those different sides, how did our people get involved? What's our history there? Why did people do it? What are the socioeconomic reasons for why people needed money? And it's something that when I talk about these things, I don't really talk about with outside people, because I know that they're not going to understand. But us growing up here, we know what those things are like and feel like, and even within our own family, it's always been an issue, because, like I said, we have people like our aunties who are really educated and are really, have some high positions and responsibilities, but then I also have other family who, got caught up in that life, including my dad. And so I always keep those things in mind, and it always keeps me humble to just be reminded of what that struggle is like, and what it means too. It's a cycle. We have a whole generation of people, of young people, young adults who, if their parents got involved in that stuff like mine did, I grew up without my dad. So there's others who, their families were broken too, because of this issue. But then, But then, you know, like, I don't know, I guess understanding all those different parts to it, like, I don't judge because I see the full picture. And also that it wasn't our fault. Like, you know, we've always just existed here, and that border isn't ours.
Yeah.
And when Homeland Security or whatever started to be enacted, I guess those are things that I learned later was like, you know, what were the reasons behind these political and policy things that were having an effect on us. So in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, I didn't understand at the time, but now looking back on it, like, why were people migrating? Because of NAFTA, you know, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is a whole other thing within itself. But when you look at, like, the impacts that it had on Mexico and farmers and just people who worked the land, like, it took those opportunities away from them and forced them to migrate. And, you know, traditionally people didn't migrate through the thumb of the nation. They migrated to the towns on either side of us, if it was Tijuana, San Diego, or Juarez, El Paso. Like, people were always going around us. But when they started to crack down on border security, they intentionally, and I'm saying this through a lot of my research, like looking at Border Patrol policies and their whole, like, shebang, is that they really did intentionally create this funnel through our area because they didn't think that people would come through here because, you know, there was no big cities around, it's dangerous, there was not really a lot of, like, you know, it was going to be more of a challenge than going to these other cities. So that's also something that I think gets lost in the narrative, or we don't talk about too much. But I like to bring it up because I've heard politicians, you know, kind of throw the reasons why Border Patrol's here or why, you know, people are harassed. You know, I've heard politicians say, well, we did it to ourselves. I'm like, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. But these are impacts of, to use terms now, like, you know, just like settler colonialism, capitalism, you know, just like even just racism, you know, and how does that line define, like, when people or one land from each other, when we're all the same and we've had that shared history, like migration from north to south and now north to south and south to north is nothing new. But that border has changed a lot of our mentality. You know, going through those times, like in high school, early 2000s, you know, like, I think we all remember those times for people that are our age, like opening up the door to 20, 30 people. And, you know, they're people that look just like us. And so, I think about all those different things, and I don't talk about them that much with other people or folks outside of our community, because I also feel like in some ways we'll be like kind of telling, telling like how it really, really is. But I'm proud to know all of that. You know, I'm proud to like have all of that experience because it helps me advocate for our people, and that's what really like has pushed me ahead. And just looking at all those pictures earlier, was really like a reminder of all that. It's like, oh shit, you know. But on the flip side, I think what keeps me happy and balanced is like the himduk, like the culture work. The food work is what is the healing part of my life, and it's continuing, and it continues to get like better and better. But I guess what I've learned is like himduk with the gukaduk, like our culture is our strength, and it's so powerful and so unique because of our experience, like just being Autumn, but also growing up on the border, growing up in the desert, like all the I think a lot of times Autumn don't think that we are special or that, you know, we don't have as much to share as other tribes or nations, but I don't think that's true. Like, I think we are in a, like, really unique position to tell our stories. Yeah. And to, like, to use that, like, to be truth tellers, just like a lot of other tribes, you know, because we were here before anybody else. So, I like to remind young people that, you know, our lives that we're living right now on the res, like, it can take you places, and I feel like I'm proof of that. Because, you know, going to the United Nations, going to Palestine, going to Finland, going to all these different places that I've been was because of who I am. You know, it wasn't because of my degree, it wasn't because I have a lot of money, it's not because of my family, it's because I'm awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's big. You're painting a very large picture here, like of what's going on and how deeply involved you are. It's making me proud. Like, I'm sitting here listening, and it's like, wow, we're capturing something serious here. It's a good feeling listening to you here.
Thank you. The first way to talk about it, you know, and to talk about it was awesome.
Yeah.
And we're all, you know, the same age, so I feel good about that too, because we're able to, like, relate to those different times that I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And yeah.
All right, Sky, you usually have a question about this time, don't you?
Well, I mean, we're, like you said, I think some of the topics that we're talking about are kind of heavy, where you can't bring outsiders in so easily because there's this information and cultural connection and just, you know, like, it's not the wrong place at the wrong time, but it's just like, you know, a lot of stuff got just poured on us, and, you know, like, how we dealt with it the best way we could. Mm-hmm. And I think that gets tough because we're such in this, you know, I don't want to say Western world, but just this kind of this American world where that's what we use, and that kind of goes into our psyche, not our psyche, but just kind of how we identify in the world, because we're still, I don't even know, like, do you feel weird saying, like, American, like Native American? Because some people, my friends will say, like, I'm just Native, because they don't want to say American because it doesn't feel right. But I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm just what I'm saying is, no, it's pretty. It's not. It's not. I mean, there's a lot of bad words I could use to describe it, but then again, it's like, you know, figuring stuff out, you know, growing, adjusting, you know, even, you know, taking matters into your own hands if needed. And so, it's like we can keep being serious, or I can go the other way. Like,
I think either way. I mean, I don't want to leave. I don't want to continue on note, but I did want to, I guess, just talk about it. You know, I wanted to talk to share that, like, that's who I am, because a lot of times people, I think, especially now, and it's always uncomfortable for me to say it, like, who know me as a figure or whatever, that I built for myself, or that other people have built for me. a lot of times I think people think like, oh, she's super traditional and she's super this and she's super that. But it took a lot to get to that point. It took a lot for me to learn and to take the time to learn, and that's why I guess I'm emphasizing like everything that I've learned came from home. Like I'm fully res educated from kindergarten to college, from Santa Rosa to TOCC, and I'm proud of that too. And I have to say that like doing all of that work, it was really hard. It was challenging. Because, you know, having those thoughts and that experience, I actually didn't get into organizing around it until I became a student at TOCC. And I met other like-minded people, like-minded Autumn or young Autumn who were, I think, thinking the same thing, like, what do we do, you know? Mm-hmm. And at the time, was when the checkpoint started to get a little more permanent, and we had heard this story about an elder in San Pedro who got cut out of her seatbelt and pulled out of her car, and she was all bruised up. And to me, that was the last straw. And you know, I was like, yeah, we had harassment. I've had a big old AK-47 or some big ass gun pulled on me too. Yeah. You know, just going through all these experiences, but I guess just being cheated that they laid hands on our elders. Yeah. And so that brought a conversation at TOCC where I met my homies, Tina and Dina Andrew, Chris Antone, also reconnecting with our Uncle Richard Juan. Yeah. And my other friend, Alex Soto, who I met when I was probably about 22, 23, who really helped me, like, look at these issues from an outside looking in perspective. Because, you know, he's awesome, but growing up in Phoenix, going back and forth, like, those people were who really, you know, we really came together and started talking about it, like, and we all had the same values, too. Being raised by our grandparents, you know, being raised with, you know, being hospitable, taking care of people, and then just, I guess, seeing all these changes. And so that really launched things. And at the time we created Thorn, and Thorn of the Human Rights Network, and we just really started speaking out and going to these community meetings, going to these legislative council meetings and challenging them and asking questions of them, Border Patrol, and just saying, like, you know, we're not going to put up with this, and then also doing our research about, you know, what are our rights when we're crossing the border or when we're dealing with Border Patrol. Yeah. And I feel like even though not everybody knew about it, I feel like we did enough to educate people and to motivate people to speak up for themselves, and also for Border Patrol to know that we weren't just going to let that happen. Yeah. That we were going to question things. And so I feel like a lot of the things that we did at that time were considered radical. Politicians and other people in the community considered us troublemakers, and maybe even being disrespectful, because, you know, we did do some marches. We, you know, questioned our legislative council with letters and, you know, just doing that. And I know, like, we're not used to seeing that kind of activism or types of actions, but we were really passionate. But I think that's all changed now, especially because people see, like, all the things we were talking about came true. Mm-hmm. The militarization, the border wall, the checkpoints, like, you know, and it makes me sad. And I actually had to take a step back from things when Trump came into office, just to, like, see, like, oh shit, like, yeah, it's happening, and this mentality, and some of those pictures I shared, some are of the first neo-Nazi rally that I went to in Phoenix, and that was another, I think, defining or, like, moment where I stopped and be like, okay, what's happening? Yeah. Just to go to an actual rally and to see the police protecting Nazis, skinheads, just, you know, everything that we're seeing now and we saw in the past year, like that shit's been building up. But, you know, it's just, I think if you're not really aware or involved, you're kind of, you know, it kind of just passes you by, and that's understandable too, because, you know, people are just trying to live and work and go to school and take care of themselves and their families, and a lot of people don't have the time or energy to think about or get involved in these type of things. But that was like, that for me, that was like, okay, you know, like growing up on the res, not really experiencing racism. I mean, yes, you know, going to Tucson, there were some instances, but to see actual, like, hate, hate, was really eye-opening and just, you know, reminded me of that, and was like a defining moment to be like, okay, there's some things to prepare for. And so, where all of that led me to now is, I work for an organization called the International Indian Treaty Council. I've been there for the past 3 years, and that's really taught me a lot. And it's really helped me gain more confidence and experience and just strength, because Treaty Council has been around since 1974, and it all started with like the American Indian movement in San Francisco, like the occupation of Alcatraz. And this organization, a lot of the people that were involved since then are still involved now. Wow. So to actually like work with an organization that has a legacy and is had people like that, committed people that I've learned a lot from, and to learn from different tribes, and just to like feel that fire, you know, from tribes and people who have been really involved in those types of things. And it's been kind of I would say a challenge, because, you know, coming from here, from Dono, where we don't really see that too much, and then being involved in things where, like, that's what it's about, is like the advocacy part and the movement part and the action part. Sometimes I feel like when I've tried to bring those things back home, it's just like we weren't ready. And also just being really mindful of how we are sometimes. Like, I understand, you know, that some people will probably look at me or hear of me and be like, oh, you know, she's out there, or she's, that doesn't mean anything here, or that, you know, we're not like that. But I think that we are. I just think those parts of our history have been forgotten or hidden from us, because, you know, we have our stories of autumn uprisings, especially when the Spaniards came. And just, you know, I've been told Autumn never lost a war. Autumn never lost a battle, because we were always intentional that, and we knew what it meant when we went into battle, that it was going to be a loss of life. It was going to be challenging. So every time we went into those battles, it was to win, because we didn't do it often. And so, that's how I think. But it's gotten, it took me to a lot of places. It's taught me, a lot of discipline, from doing the advocacy work, going to the United Nations. I tripped out. I was like, you know, that morning was really crazy. I was in a rush. I was staying in Queens, and I had to take the train, and it was summertime, and it was hot, and I was like, oh, man, I'm going to look all trash on TV, like, everything. But when I got to the chambers, and like, you know, I'm up there in front sitting with these political leaders from other countries, and my name's on the screen. When I introduced myself and Autumn, like, I kind of choked up, because I was like, wow, like, I'm here. Yeah. And it was also really cool, because, like, in the audience, there were people from all these different countries, indigenous people, and it's not just brown folks, it's like indigenous people from Africa and Asia, you know, all these different indigenous peoples. And so it was funny because they're just like us, like they're used to talking shit to these leaders, you know, like saying, what about this and what about that?
Yeah.
And there was this guy from I forgot where he was from. I want to say like Bangladesh or something. And he was asking all of us on that panel, like, you know, talking about what they were going through with climate change, and what these political figures or leaders were going to do to help them survive, especially around food. And I looked to either side of me, and it's like you could tell these leaders are used to like dismissing people and dismissing questions.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll answer. And I just told the guy, I was like, you know, this reminds me of home, but what I want to remind you is that you don't need any of these people to survive. Like, as indigenous peoples, we have knowledge about the land and the food and shelter and all those things, and you already have it. Like, we need to be self-sufficient. You shouldn't be worrying about how these people are going to help you. And I'm not saying that to dismiss you, but I'm just saying that as a reminder. And it blew everybody's minds. Like, after we were done, somebody came up to me and they were like, that's the most radical thing I've ever heard in these chambers. And I just laughed because I'm like, it's just common sense, you know? And those are just like, things that I like, you know, I said earlier, like I was taught. But it just reminded me again, like our culture is our strength. And just kind of keeping like humble. And that really speaks, you know, that people can tell when you're being sincere and they know when you're real. And I just always keep those things in mind, you know, because it's a reflection, especially if I'm out there and I'm saying I'm awesome and I'm awesome. You know, I want that to reflect back on all of us and be like, oh, I met her awesome, and she was really cool, and she was really strong.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it all ties in. It all ties in, like it's all related. Like, I don't know what conversations or thoughts are about, like, you know, how would you say, purpose, or what do they call it? What's another word for it?
Or meaning of life, or
like when you're meant to go on a certain path.
Destiny. Yeah,
destiny. I don't know if it's destiny, but sometimes it really feels like it to me. And it's because of like how all these things have built up, you know. And so with Treaty Council, going back to that, like it's really taught me a lot. But honestly, like I'm actually getting ready to transition out of Treaty Council, my position there, because now I really feel a need to come back home.
Yeah.
Until we go back into that community work. And what's made that possible is I got a fellowship from this new organization called the Indian Collective. And they have they call it a Changemaker Fellowship. And I applied last year and I didn't get it, and I was so bummed, and I was really sad, and I was pissed too. But I made it to the top 3 with these 2 other badass women that I like know and respect.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, as long as I made it to that point, like to be competing with these ladies, and like that means something. And I wasn't gonna apply this year. I was like, fuck that. They didn't see they didn't get a chance the first time, so it's gonna be their loss. Because I'm an Aries, so usually if I don't want to say if I don't get something, but like if I don't do something or accomplish something, it usually just gives me more motivation to be like, oh, I don't need your money, or I don't need your resources, or I don't need your recognition. Like, I do it on my own. but I applied and I got it, and what that means, it's basically a $75,000 cash award or award to go towards my own personal development. And it's really like, wow. It's really something new, but what I appreciate about this is like the people who developed this fellowship are basically the generation of organizers before us who really saw how much of a struggle it was to do organizing our movement work while you're just trying to survive. And we created this fellowship to basically give you enough to cover what might be your salary for a whole year, to focus on your personal health and development and wellness and basically whatever you need to do to level up. And so for me, what that means is coming back home to see what I can do to level up on this food work. I want to write a lot about the border. I want to write a book.
Cool.
And I want to go back to school. So,
nice. Yeah.
That starts in April, and so that's what I'm going to be doing for the next year. And it's really humbling, like, I think not just myself, but other fellows. It's really a challenge to, like, think of, like, your worthiness. Like, dang, do I deserve this? Am I worthy of it? Like, do with this? But,
you're worthy of it.
But I know, but it's really humbling to look back, and especially to look through all those pictures and be like, yeah, I put in a lot of work. It's time for me to kind of just be a student again, is how I look at it. Like, I want to take time I'm going to be leaving my position there at Treaty Council. Like, I want to take time to really spend time with elders that are still here.
Yeah.
To help where I can and to put into practice what I've learned these past couple of years.
Nice.
And having this conversation is all a part of that too. Like, it really helps me to say it and to say it to people that I know. And that's what I meant, like, about our own community, because I know our community is going to be listening to this. Yeah. It's like, I think that's what's really special about coming from a community is accountability. As people know you and, you know, putting it out there, I think that's a special thing. It's like people to hold you to that and to have faith in you and to believe you and to support you.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at now. And, one thing that I did talk about, but I do want to share, not now or maybe later in the conversation if you guys want to share or have questions, but going back to being a culture teacher at Bible, that was another big eye-opener. But before we go into that, I don't know, I feel like I've talked a lot.
It's all great. Like, I'm loving it. I'm sitting here just listening, like, smiling, like, wow, this is a pretty incredible journey you've made here. Like, wow, like, your whole description of the UN was like, holy shit, like, wow, it's big. Like, I remember seeing you up there, and you had your name was on the TV, and it was like, wow, like, I mean, I think that was the last I had really, like, found, like, it made it all its way, the information made its way to me, and I watched that, and I had this, like, I don't know, just, I want to say, like, just this deep pride or, like, a appreciation, like, I want to say, like, a smile that was in my chest. Like, I was just like, wow, that's incredible. Like to see a face I knew on the TV at a place that I've heard of and, only ever dreamed of, and I remember also seeing you, like, going to D.C., and I don't know if you were just doing trips or if you were there on purpose, because there was a bunch of times you've gone, and
It's all Disney.
Yeah. I was just like, wow. And to hear you talk, like, I like just listening to it because it gives me pride to know you and to be related to you, and also to know you're out there in the world. I've said that a couple times now to some of our guests here. Is like, wow, it's pretty incredible journey, and I want to be a part of it too. So like, I want to stay tuned to your life, and we want to definitely have you back. Like, this has been an incredible talk, like, to hear. Like, I don't know, my mind is blown. It's like, I'm really hopeful that you find what you're looking for when you go back down there. Like, I'm kind of making the move myself down there, like, starting to put wheels in motion here. And I keep having these fantasies of joining the cause of something that I believe in. And a lot of the things you're describing, I want to be a part of that. And it's exciting.
Yeah.
This is an important time because things have changed, and it's been within our lifetime.
Yep.
And it's been incredible, drastic, sometimes not even seen. Like, it's going on in the background. And if you're not there being a witness, which you've been there on several occasions. I was looking through the photos and I was like, wow, like, you're out there experiencing this, and it's not, you know, it's like that saying, does a tree make a noise when it falls? Like, if nobody's there to hear it, and like, so if you're not there witnessing it, it just goes on. And like, I'm glad that you're out there, and you know, but a bunch of us are out there. Like, a lot of people that are interested and disgusted by the way things are going and getting involved. It really makes me like proud to hear everything you're saying here, and I want to see what you're doing next. I want to see what comes up next for you, and at the same time, I want to be a part of it. And I don't know if Sky's got something to add on that. Like, I just feel like you got. I'm hopeful and happy to hear all this, and it's like, I mean, not all of it. I mean, it gets pretty dark. There's this heavy sadness that I think we have all experienced in just witnessing the changes that's going on, and how it's like a lot of times it's like us and them kind of thing. Like, there's a presence on our nation, and it's dark, and it has a history, and it's often violent, and wow, like you're really bringing it to light, and I like that we're here to capture it. It's very cool.
Yeah. What kind of got it. So like this, I think, because we all sort of we see the potential, and we know, like, if we all get our wheels in motion, you know, we want to see this change, like the community that you envision, like for the kids now that are like going to be graduating. Are you? Because me and Bob talk about this a lot of times with, you know, even what you get from college, and even he talked about it earlier with the kind of that format of having to be there doesn't fit your schedule because you're going all over the country, you know. So it's kind of like, what would you tell the youth now? Because it's kind of like Bob's like, maybe not right away, maybe take some time, but like also kind of knowing that, if you go the college route, you know, you can create change in the political world, and so it's just like, what is your message for all of that? Because it's like you got to kind of get in it, but you don't really need it sometimes, you know. So I guess it's. Can you speak on that?
Right before you do, I think what Sky, he's on a good point here, and I want to add this to it. When you do speak on it, I kind of want you to speak on it like you're talking to the kids on the res, like, because I think I think that both of you are involved in that, where the kids need to know what's going on and know that they can be a part of this, you know, going forward. As they get older, this is their history too. And so when you answer Sky's question, I kind of want to add that to it. As if you're talking to the kids.
Well,
you just stole my question, but yeah.
Sorry, bro.
I first want to say, like, just to some of your comments, you know, I just want to say that, I think you are doing your part. You are a part of it because we're all part of this nation and this community. And Sky, I know you've worked with a lot of young people, with Edge, and just like seeing that has been inspiring to me too, because our young people need to have positive, healthy, safe places to be, and also to have that space be created by men is so important too, because, you know, a lot of our kids don't have father figures, or if their fathers aren't in their lives, and so to have that presence with our young people is, like, to me, that's just as important. It's important. Like, there's no comparing all of our work and all of our roles, because we all can't be in the same place, you know. I can't coach basketball. And so it just makes me feel good to know that there's people doing that work, that you guys are doing that work. And for you, Benji, and for both of you, like, just doing this podcast, it makes me super proud too, because, you know, the initiative that you guys have made to talk to different people in our community that people don't normally hear from. Like Big Rob, that's my homie. Like, we've been homies ever since Santa Rosa Ranch days. He's my brother. And, you know, with a lot of other, of my bros, like, that was another thing. Like, I wasn't always a girly girl. I grew up with a lot of guys, and, you know, that was rough too. And the mean streets of cells, getting in trouble, spending a night in juvie, like, you know, those are things that I didn't share, but I've had those experiences too.
Yeah.
And, it's just, you know, we're all playing our part, and I think it just becomes more prominent because we're getting older. And, you know, we're starting to think about, you know, where are we investing our time and our energy, and, what's our purpose?
Yeah.
So,
that's a lot of why I'm going back down there.
Yeah.
I want to be present.
Mhm. And that's what it is, like, just being present, like, just being in those places where a lot of people aren't. There's been times, you know, where me and also, like, my other brother from another mother, Mikey, that we've been in places where we were the only young people there, and now those people aren't here anymore. And so that's a big responsibility. Yeah. But, you know, I guess that's just what was meant to be, and so that plays into it. But as far as the young people, I really, this is where the experience teaching at Bravo comes into play. I never, ever thought I would be a culture teacher at Bobby Kirby High School. And that's, you know, that's where I went to school, graduated class of 2004.
Woo.
And you know, just like, again, at that time was when a lot of things were happening, and there was a point in my junior year where I got busted with a lot of weed, and I was expelled for my whole junior year. And I had to go through probation, and I had to go to diversion, and I had to, you know, be in those spaces with other young women who were going through a lot of shit, much more than me. And so it really, like, opened my eyes to the struggles that a lot of our peers were going through, and what that kind of life was like, you know, if I wanted to continue doing those things, that these are the places I was going to end up. And when I went back to school, and, you know, I knew I was cool, I knew I was a good person, but to also have that, like, label on me really was, like, it really hurt me. Because when I was expelled at Babel, I tried to go to Hashin, and they didn't want me because they thought I was going to be a troublemaker.
Oh, man.
But to go back to school and to have Mr. Boschka, and Mr. Brooks, like, all pull me aside and say, you need to get your shit together. This isn't you, and this isn't where we want to see you go or be. And that really touched me. And so I'm really thankful for those little things. And then to, you know, have that challenge of staying every day after school my whole junior year to make up for that time lost, and then still being able to graduate with my class, like, that obviously taught me a lot. And so when I was asked to come to teach at Babel, because of all of this experience that I had built up, I was just kind of blown away, and I almost didn't take it, because Mikey was already teaching there at the time, and he's the one who, you know, gave me the opportunity. And I remember being on the phone with him, and I was out shopping, and I remember him asking me, like, you know, do you want to take this position? And I was like, I had to think about it. And he got mad at me. And he's like, well, you're always talking about youth this and culture this. And like, and, you know, it's true. And that's what I mean about, you know, having people around you that are going to keep you accountable to what you say and what you do.
Yeah.
And I took it, and I remember the first day that when I got onto campus, and who are the first people to come into my class? It was Arnold. It was Arnold and Morris, and, you know, they were the ones that busted me when I got. So they teased me. They did tease me in the beginning. They were like, dang, like, same thing. Like, we never thought you'd come back as a teacher. But that was cool, and they were really happy, you know, to see us and to have us there. And one of the things that my mom told me when I started that job was that it was serious, and that I needed to keep in mind that whatever I was teaching or what I say, that these young people were going to take it to heart. Yeah. So I had a big responsibility. And in the beginning, it was a challenge to, like, find my groove, teaching-wise. But I think what was really beautiful about all of that was, like, having a young, awesome teacher that these young people could relate to.
Yeah.
You know, me being in their shoes in a lot of different ways, from, you know, getting in trouble or being labeled a troublemaker to being really involved and active and considered, you know, one of the smart kids or whatever.
Yeah.
It really, like, helped me understand, and just, like, I'm really proud of that. You know, I had a really good relationship with all these young people, and it took some time for some of them to trust me, but I didn't push it. You know, I just remembered, like, how it felt when teachers would try to be too nice or too in my face, and it just pushed me away. And, you know, just being cool and let them observe me and see what I was about, and eventually I developed relationships with them to where I'm still cool with them now, especially like my first senior class, being that they were older, and I just love that, like, to be a part of their lives and help them figure things out, like getting ready to graduate and telling them, like, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's going to be hard to be an adult, and all these things that you have to take care of and be responsible for, especially for the young parents at the time.
Yeah.
But that we could do it, and just be that motivator and somebody to believe in them, somebody to be there when they needed a hug, somebody to teach them things. And what I really loved about it was having Mikey right across the way where they could have both a male and a female presence, and really have the opportunity to share our classes. If we need to separate the males from the females, to have different conversations, to like actually play those roles or to teach those roles, like about ceremony or harvesting or planting or singing, like all those things. It was just really awesome, and I really just took advantage of whatever I could, I have pretty big classes. I think my biggest class was like 42, 43 students.
Oh.
And, it was a lot, but it also taught me a lot. And, I did have times when, students would try to be disrespectful, but what I think was cool is other students, like, they were the ones who got after them. Like, be cool or shut the fuck up, sorry. I had students who had my back, and I think that said a lot, because they probably are, like, their peers, don't want to be not cool. And so I'm really thankful for that, and those are the students that I still have, like, solid relationships with, and being in the school, working with Mr. Wesh and my Uncle Mike, with the planting and, taking the kids out into the youth out into the yard to pick eat by and to pick Jordan and to make shuggy bundles and, like showing them like, hey, all of this stuff is around us.
Yeah. Wow.
And just encouraging them and being like really hands-on. And I think it got to the point where I was too cool for other teachers and for the principal, because a lot of times when students got in trouble, they would come to my class, or they asked me to help defend them, and it just kind of got to that point where, I think it was they felt like I was a little too comfortable, or a little too comfortable, and so I taught there for 2 years, and what really I felt like I taught a lot, but I also learned a lot. Just to like reflect on what it was. What's it like to be an autumn teenager? How things have changed, like what we're preparing them for. And a lot of my experiences and my friends and people that I know, I did bring them into the classroom, and that helped open their eyes to like writing poetry, to making beats. Alex was also doing beat making workshops after school.
Cool.
What else? People who were at Standing Rock. They actually took some of our students to Standing Rock because we were following what was happening, and that was really like a whole story within itself. But me and Mikey took a couple of seniors up there and talking about issues like water issues, and I remember talking about water because we're following Standing Rock, but also what was happening in Flint, Michigan, talking about some of the mining projects that were happening around here. And I remember one of my students, if he listens to this, Chavo Ventura, I remember he got all mad at the end of the class, and he was just like, I think he just got frustrated because he was like, they're teaching us all these bad things, like bad things that are happening in the world. Like, what about the good things? And I really had to take that night to be like, okay, you know, like, how can I turn this around? How can I not leave my classes on that note? Yeah. And, you know, leave them inspired instead of feeling heavy, like you know, earlier, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a big lesson for me too, just to be mindful of bringing things full circle and reminding ourselves about, you know, our strengths and who we are. And so what I did the next day was I asked all of our students to bring water from home. Uh-huh. We all put it in a pottery, and we prayed over it, and, you know, we shared water, and, you know, just kind of had some thoughts about that. And that was really turned things around. And so, and then also, like, you know, because these students are younger than me and us, I thought I knew everything about the border, or that I already, you know, well, not everything, but I felt like I already, like, had all this experience, right? And I remember having a writing assignment about, you know, if they've ever, about border issues, you know, what do you think about it? What do you know about it? What are some of the things you experienced? And I was so blown away by their writing. And I remember one guy who wrote a poem about how when he opened his door to Juchgam, to him, it not only meant helping somebody, but it meant that he was going to get new shoes, or that their electricity was going to be paid, or that they'd be able to buy groceries. Yeah. And that was really, like, humbling to me. And just to feed them all this knowledge. And, you know, of course they're teenagers, so can't really gauge sometimes, like, if they're listening or not. But, like, seeing that look on their face, like that aha moment, or, like, seeing them get all hyped up, because, you know, I could tell, like, they were listening. And before Trump got into office, Border Patrol came to do a presentation for the whole school, so they took all the students into the auditorium, and I remember being mad about it. I was like, I'm not gonna go, you know, like, I'm not gonna go. But then Mr. Wesh, he came in, he was like, so Miss Juan, he's like, are you gonna go to the presentation? And I was just like, I don't think so, Wesh. And he, you know, he looked at me, gave me that look like Wesh does. Uh-huh. He said, well, I'm just going to say this. Would you rather hear what they're going to be telling our students, or would you rather not? And I was like, you're right. So I did go, and I was sitting there, and it was like my heart was pumping, and just listening to all these different things. And when they had the question and answer session, I was so surprised, because, like, you know, I wanted to jump up and ask questions. Yeah. But the seniors, they were the first ones, and one of their first questions was, if Trump gets into office, are you with him or are you with us? And I was just like, whoa. And the look on the agents' faces, like, whoa, you know, because, you know, the border wall was just a thought at the time, or like, I guess, like, nobody really believed it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then they asked them, you know, like, what are the environmental impacts of the integrated fixed towers, the surveillance towers? And, you know, everybody was just, again, like, blown away. And it made me so proud. I was like, okay, they are listening, and they can speak up for themselves, and for all of us. And so transitioning into your next question about what would I tell these young people is that, and I don't mean for this to sound corny, but I think it's an important part of awesome teachings is that when we think about the children's shrines, when we think about the Arian, there's a reason why the sacrifice was chosen, because they're the most precious thing, you know, out of all of the things that we tried to stop the flood, it was children. And so when we're born, you know, we're already that precious, the most precious thing ever. And I think I'm a current.
Wow.
I think a lot of times people aren't told that, you know, like how precious you are. And I think especially too, I don't mean to bring it up that way, but like, you know, with Catholicism, like you're taught like you're a sinner until you're baptized, you know, those kind of things. But in Autumn teachings is like, no, like from the instant that you're born or even before that, like when you're created, like you have purpose and you have gifts and you're the most precious thing because you're the only way to save us. And so I think about it in that sense still.
Wow.
Is you know, young people, you are our most precious resource because you're that bridge between the older generations and all of that knowledge and taking that into the future. And that's something that we also have too. And I have, like I said earlier, it's like, you know, having that responsibility of having spent time with Joe Joaquin, but Danny Lopez, but Francis Manuel, but Christine Johnson, but all of these elders that I had the time to be with and to learn from, like, you know, what good am I if I'm not passing those things on? And so everything that we're about, like, it's all out there. It's really up to you, and that's how it was for me. Like, I didn't grow up in a super traditional family. Everything that I learned was in school and from other people. I learned from the community. So remember that too, like how important community is and how important it is to take time to spend time with your grandparents, with your family, to be respectful, to be helpful, and to just gain that knowledge. Because I've also been a firm believer in what you said earlier, Sky, which is, you know, well, one of my friends used to say, don't let school get in the way of your education. And I've took that to heart too. It's like, you know, I love to read. I'll read anything. You know, and learning from people, like, it's all out there. It's just really up to you. And, you know, helping you find your voice and your purpose. And, you know, we're all one people. We're all one community. We're all one nation. So a lot of these things that I was talking about, it affects all of us. But it's just, It's just up to everyone to decide what they're going to do. Are we just going to stay in our houses and let them tell us that we can't be on our own land and that we can't cross the border, that we can't go to our sacred sites, that we can't protect ourselves? Or are we going to take all of who we are and say, no, we can do this because we're awesome. We're gone out there. We're desert people. Where are you at? Like, we're in the desert. I would just encourage young people, and not just young people, but all of us, to just be thankful, first of all, that we're here. We are really fortunate to have beautiful land. I think especially the change of scenery these past 2 weeks with the snow on our mountains, and, you know, we're in that transition into spring, and, you know, not everybody's lucky to have clean air to breathe and land to roam, and, you know, our foods and just all of these different things that make us who we are. It's really something to realize and take advantage of us, because if my story is proof of that just being awesome can take you anywhere, like, it's happened.
Yeah.
It happened. And so, at this point, you know, I don't know what the near future looks like, but I do know that down the road somewhere that I would like to run for chairwoman. I would like to go back to teaching again, and I would like to write books.
Nice.
And so, but I just don't know what that timeline looks like. But that's it. You know, hymn book, the go-to book, our culture, our ways of life is our strength. And don't ever let anybody tell you different, because they will, especially when you get into those academic spaces. You know, even at GSC, I had an instructor tell me, you know, awesome ways of knowing aren't legitimate when we're talking about science or climate change or anything like that, because it's not validated proof or whatever. But that pissed me off so much.
That would have pissed me off.
But that wasn't true. You know, it's not true. So don't believe when somebody tries to tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
So those are my words, and I just want to, again, thank you guys for
thank you.
asking to be here and for listening and for giving me this much time, because I saw Juan's interview and I was like, dang, an hour and a half, I don't know. An hour and 45 minutes. So I know it's a while, and it does take patience for somebody to, you know, listen this long. So for people who are listening, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For hearing me, and I'm around if anybody ever wants to chat some more or has questions.
I do for sure. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, that was it. I heard you. That's it.
Well, I think you're always welcome to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like there's so many topics that we can talk for an hour and 45 minutes on. So, you know, you're always welcome if you have any pressing news or hot gossip, or you know, just want to just talk shit. You know, you have, you know, so much, you know, experience in this big world that we're, you know, just trying to hold up our name, but, you know, at the same time, you know, go on our individual journeys and stuff. So it's like, it's cool to see. You know, I'm waiting for the Amy Juan movie. Yeah, I'm waiting for that to come out, because it's, you know, pretty awesome. You know, just the lives that we can live if we're, you know, present and engaged. So, you know, kudos to you and just, you know, doing you. So, I feel very blessed, you know, just to kind of know more, but also, you know, that last, you know, pretty much answer what I asked about the schooling thing. You know, you said it, and it's, you know, to all the kids out there, you know, like, you know, figure out who you are and then just kind of dive in.
Yeah.
Be fearless.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, everybody. I'm glad you came. I'll definitely want to have you back for sure. This has been a great experience. Like I've kind of gone through the roller coaster of emotions here with you while listening to you speak.
I know.
And I like it. I like it, and I think people are going to enjoy this. And I hope we promote this so that people will hear what you had to say, because it was pretty incredible to listen to. So thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you. I'll be back.
Good. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you later. I'm going to hit the button now. You guys good?
Mm-hmm. Have a good night. Peace.
Yeah.
Peace.